life through him. Some people, they can't find a reason to live. But through him, you always have life. Who here knows that? Who here knows that through him, anything is possible? That through him, your father can be saved. That through him, you were able to see your mother again. Perhaps you thought you would never see your mom again. There's family troubles at home. You're like, what am I going to do? My mom and dad, they're fighting. But God, he's like, it's all right. I got you. I can provide a miracle in your life. As long as you live through him, as long as the image of him is just seen through you. That's what you want to strive to be. People will look at you and you're like, what's with that guy? That's what's with that girl. They're not like the people next to them. They've had a miracle in their lives. And they want a miracle themselves. That's why they're curious about you. And that's why God lives in you. You live through God. That's how they see that. That's how they know. Amen. Lift your hands, everybody. The one who made is moving here in front of me, moving here in front of me. The one who made the light to hear is silencing my every fear, silencing my every fear. I believe in you, I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. I believe in you, I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. The one who does impossible is reaching out to take me home, reaching out to make me whole. The one who put death in his place, eye. I'm gonna hand create your eye. I'm gonna hand create your hands. What you see is because He made that for you. Your legs, you're able to walk because He made that for you. The road is already made for you. His path that He created for you personally. All you have to do is take that.
Amen. I'm gonna invite you guys to take your seats. Before I get started, I just want to thank Haljan for the opportunity. I also want to thank the pastor of this church for allowing us to be here. How many of you guys are enjoying the AC? I also want to thank my pastor for allowing me to be here. I want to thank my father as well for praying for me. And tonight, when Haldren first told me, I got very nervous. That's just an instinct that we have. We get nervous immediately. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to start. We don't know where to begin. How do we prepare? So the first thing we think of is, okay, girl, what can we preach about girl? We start trying to think of everything about growth and grow, and nothing satisfies you. Nothing really sticks. Nothing really catches your attention. Because in the beginning, I've noticed that the beginning of putting a message together, I tend to find something that satisfies me. And I notice that I tend to lean towards something that catches my attention or something that's attractive. And I've noticed that starting the process, I don't tend to ask God, what does your youth want? So the first day, I couldn't think of nothing. The second day, Sunday came, and I couldn't think of nothing. And then yesterday, I kind of gave up a little bit on the whole topic of growth. And I just started to look in myself. I started to look inward, and I asked God, what do I need to grow in? What do I struggle with? I started to look a few years back when I had no ministry at all, when I didn't know where I would fit in or where I belonged, or where I couldn't even imagine myself speaking to youth. I couldn't imagine myself being in meetings, planning things for youth. I couldn't imagine me calling musicians and helping them grow. I started to think back to those years. And I started to remember the days that I didn't know anything, but I remember I had a burning inside of me. I had a pressure that I had to be something. I had to be someone. I know Jesus didn't die for me to feel unsatisfied. I know my parents didn't go through everything that they went through for me not to become someone in God. And tonight I'm going to be talking about potential. Because no matter in what walk in life you are, no matter your financial status, no matter the color of your skin, no matter your age, no matter what church you attend to, the one thing that everyone in this room has in common to grow is potential. That's good. And when I think about potential, the first thing that strikes to my mind is sports. Everyone always, especially now with everyone talking about LeBron, now the potential that the Lakers might have. And I'm not really a big sports person. I'm not really someone that tends to know about players. But I do remember the last time I played basketball. It wasn't too long ago, actually. And I remember that I had my shorts matching my shirt. My socks were long. I remember I had the right shoes on. You know, I was ready to go to Sunset Park. Me and my brothers were going. And I remember getting to the basketball court. And if you guys notice, every time before any game starts, soccer, basketball, whatever it is, but in this occasion, basketball, everyone just starts playing before the game, before even the teams are chosen. They're just in the court playing, and they're messing around, and they're just playing with the basketball. So, I mean, I had my whole gear on. I had my shorts like fitted. I had everything that I needed to play basketball. So I get up in the court pretending I know how to play. And I remember I'm just minding my own business, right? But then I see like Isaac, like Isaac had the ball, and I'm like, Isaac's easy work, right? So I go up to him, like, I'm gonna go get him. I go charging to him, like he's guarding the ball, and I'm like, this guy easy work. So I get behind him. I don't know what happened. I just see his elbow come up, and it hits me straight in the nose. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, oh my gosh. And like good friends that I have, they come up to me like, oh, it's just swollen. So my nose was swollen for at least a week. I would hear this cracking sound, this like weird sound. I'm like, I would touch it and it would crack. I'm like, damn, my nose is still swollen? Like, that's normal? You know, like, it was Friday night, and I remember I invited Haldren to preach, and my nose was just hurting. It was like swollen. The sad thing is my coworkers never knew my nose was swollen, so I don't know what that says about my nose. But I remember I invited Haldren, and I was upset because my brothers didn't want to introduce him, knowing my nose was swollen. I was embarrassed. So like, true story, you can ask Haldren, like, I went up there and I was like facing down the whole time. And I was like, all right guys, I'm gonna invite this special guy, I'm so excited. Like, everyone's probably thinking like, why is this guy like looking at the ground this whole time? Like if I was mad at Haldren, I talked super quick. I'm like, all right Haldren, and I left. So I got in the car, I'm like, my nose can't be swollen for this long. So I go to the Mountain View Hospital down the street. I go there, I'm waiting in line, filling papers, calling my mom, Mom, what's my date of birth? Because like, you know, like, you always need your mom when you go to the hospital. And I'm right there in the hospital trying to be a grown-up, filling all these things up. They take me to the back. And then the nurses take me to get like x-rays. And they would position me and they would tell me like, you're seriously not in pain? And I was like, no, why, what's wrong? We can't tell you, but because we're not the doctor, but you're not in pain? And I'm like, no. Like, okay. So they take me, they make me wait forever. Like, I'm just sitting there for like an hour and the doctor comes and like, yep, your nose is broken. So I call my lawyer to go to Isaac's house. And I'm like, I'm just kidding. But there's really no point to this story, honestly. I'm just kidding. So going back to basketball, I remember that when everyone was up there and when everyone was shooting the ball around, I kept hearing a phrase, and you hear it all the time in basketball. Hey, set me up. And like the guy would run and they'll throw the basketball and they're like, boom. And like, set me up, set me up. That's all you hear all the time. Set me up, set me up. In soccer, it's called centro. But in basketball, it's like, set me up, set me up. And I've noticed that the person won't set someone up unless they see potential in that play, or they see potential that might be a shot, or that might be beneficial to the team. And I'm going to be going based off a passage that we find in 2 Kings. And before I dive into this passage, just to put a little context to it, we see this pattern happening with Israel a lot. You see that God frees them, but then the king or the leader begins to walk in sin. So God allows oppression to come upon Israel. And this pattern continues. And it was no different in this passage. We see the king of Israel in Samaria walking in sin. The Bible says that he was walking in sin. And because he was walking in sin, God's people were walking in sin. And I'm just going to pause right there. I haven't started my message, but for everyone here, we are all leaders. Be careful where you're walking, because there's always going to be someone following you. If you're an older brother, be careful where you walk to, because your brothers might follow. If you're a husband or leader of a family, be careful where you're walking, because there's always going to be people following you. And in this case, the king was walking in sin. The Bible doesn't reword it. It doesn't phrase it any other way. It says the king was walking in sin, and because of that, God's people were walking in sin. They were doing things that God was not pleased with. They were worshiping other gods. They were doing things that were not good, and they were evil in God's eyes. And because of that, God allowed oppression to happen. And we get to chapter 13 in the second book of Kings, in verse 17, and we see the king. We see the king of Joash. They have weird names, I'm sorry. And we see this king that he's fed up with it. He's scared because he's being oppressed. So he goes to the prophet Elijah, and this was already the end of his ministry. He was already ill. He was already going to die. And he approaches him, and he tells him, he starts complaining of everything in his life. He starts complaining about what he has. His army was very small, was very weak. He starts complaining about the position that he's in. He starts complaining about what was handed into him when he became king. He starts complaining, and he's asking this prophet of God for help. So immediately the prophet tells him in 2 Kings chapter 13, verse 17, he says, then he said, open the windows to the east. So he opened it. Again, it said, then he said, open the window to the east. So he opened it. And isn't it true that a lot of times we have windows closed in our lives that we're scared to open? And the reason I say that is because God specifically told him to open the window to the east, because once he opened it, he had a clear view to the enemy. I can't imagine how long he had that window closed. I can't imagine how long he had it shut. I can't imagine if he had a lock or a guard behind there, because that window was, once open, it was a clear view straight to the enemy, straight to the oppressors, straight to a reminder of failure, straight to the very people that are limiting him and his kingdom, straight to the people that are reminding him that he's not good enough, straight to the people reminding him that he doesn't have a big army, straight to the people that are reminding him that maybe he doesn't have a big God because of the oppression that is on the people. And it continues by saying that Elijah said, shoot. And he shot. Then he said, an arrow of victory for Yahweh and an arrow of victory against Aram. And you shall fight the Arameans at Ephek until finishing them. So God gives him an arrow. The first arrow was for God to get the glory. And the second arrow was for his victory. And he gets an arrow, and one was for him to shoot it. And he was going to shoot it towards the enemy. And as the story goes on, right before, it's literally telling the king that I'm going to give you victory. It says, until finishing them. It's already giving him a glimpse of the potential that was coming. He was getting a glimpse of what God was going to do. He was getting a glimpse of what God's going to fulfill for the kingdom of God. He was getting a glimpse of what God had in store for him. And then it goes to verse 18. Then he said, take the arrows, these arrows that God gave him, these arrows that the prophet gave him. So he took them. He said to the king of Israel, strike the ground. So he struck 3 times and stopped. The man of God was angry with him and said, you should have struck the ground 5 times or 6 times. Then you would have defeated Aram and completely destroyed it. But now you will defeat it only 3 times. And when I read that, it reminded me of regret right away. Because you could have done this. You should have done this. If you only tried a little harder. If you only didn't give up, if you didn't fall short. Regret came into mind. How many of you guys have something that you regret so much? How many of you guys have something that you guys really totally want to ignore? And you guys want nothing to do with it, but being consistently reminded that you fell short of something that God gave you a glimpse of. It's not a place a human wants to be, a man wants to be. The first point that I'm going to talk about today, and just tell your neighbor, what scares you? What scares you? What scares you? And this first point came from this passage, how I was mentioning before, that we all have a window that we want closed. You can't tell me that in this generation and our age groups that we don't have something that we're afraid of. Whether it's a sin so big that we don't want to confess, so we close the window. Whether it's, I don't want my friends or my church to know that my family is struggling financially, that next month we might not even have a place to live. So I'm going to shut that window so I don't see that view. Maybe it's I haven't eaten in a week and no one in this church knows. They're all going to go out to eat afterwards and I haven't eaten in 3 days. But I'm going to close that window because I'm scared of it. Or sometimes it's the thought of depression or the thought of suicide or the thought of you consuming pills and you can't get over the addiction and you don't know where it's going to lead. So you don't want to deal with it. So you rather close the door. You rather close that window to the east. You rather open a more favorable window. You rather open something better. So you tend to close that window. And I'm just trying to get a little deep and a little real because I also have siblings. I also have close friends. I also see people that struggle. And the things that I'm talking about are real things that I know people that are going through. These are not things that I'm making up. These are not things that I'm guessing. These are not things that I'm assuming. These are real things happening. And maybe someone sitting next to you is dealing with this and you have no idea that they're closing a window that they want to ignore, that they want to forget about, just like this king. He wanted nothing to do with it. He had it closed. I don't know for how long he had it closed. because they were oppressed for so long. But who wants to wake up in their own kingdom, in their own palace, with the view, with the reminder of their regret, with the reminder of their failures, with the reminder of what they're struggling, with the reminder of what's keeping them from growing? The second point that I want to point out is pick up what you have. Pick up what you have. The prophet is approached by the king with complaints. He was complaining that he had a small army. He was complaining that his kingdom wasn't good enough. He was complaining about his position. He was complaining and complaining and complaining. And the prophet didn't want to hear all of this because he was sick. He was going to die in a couple of months. He didn't have the strength that he had before to be hearing complaints. He heard complaints his whole life. He complained. And he's approaching him of what he had. It's too small, it's too little, it's nothing. He is the king of Israel, and he never once mentioned that he had God in his side. He never mentioned the name of God. He never mentioned who gave him the kingdom and who gave him the army. He never mentioned who the God of Israel was. He was just complaining of what he had because he was scared. He was just complaining that he begged of the prophet for an answer. He was scared, but he never once mentioned God, who was on his side. The God of Israel. He never mentioned the God of Israel. He wouldn't have been complaining if he knew that the God of Israel was in his side. And I mention this because a lot of us were born in church. A lot of us were born and we were raised in church. Or a lot of us, for many, many years, we know about God. But when we're struggling and we're going through something so heavy and that has a weight over us that makes us sad, that makes us regret, that makes us feel low in our lives, we never once mention the God that we have. We just mention that we can't make it. We mention that we're not good enough. We mention that we can't grow. We mention that we have no potential. We mention that we have no meaning in life. We mention that no one loves us. We mention that no one can heal our heart, that no one can understand what we're going through. We give all these complaints. Then we post them on social media, and we text them to friends, and we give calls at 12 or 1 in the morning so people can hear our problems, but not once do we mention God in all of it. Not even once. And it saddens me, and I include myself in this because there was a period where it was like that for me as well, where I would just complain that I wasn't good enough. I would complain that I didn't get a chance to play anywhere. I would complain that I couldn't learn shout. I would complain that I couldn't hear a song and learn it, and I would get jealous, and I would want to give up. And I remember that I wanted to be able to speak, and I couldn't find the words. And I remember all this stuff, and I would complain, and I never mentioned that God had a purpose for my life. Amen. You have to pick up what you have. And it's funny to me that he complained. And before I go to the next point, this is what caught me off guard, because his name literally means God gives, and his father's name literally means you belong to God. So someone who is named the possession of God, someone who is named God gave you everything, was complaining about what he had. This generation, I really believe that we're just like the king. We have been named the children of God. We belong to him. We belong to God. Not only that, we've been named to receive and that God gives us everything that we need. Amen. And we still complain about it. They have been named. The significance of names were not taken lightly back then. They weren't just named something just because. They were named something because they had a significance for their purpose and for their life and what God was going to do. Amen. So he took his name for granted, that God gives you everything that you need, and he took his father's name for granted, that you are the possession of God. You belong to God. And it takes me to my third point. God gave you arrows. And I like the reference of arrows, and I promise you that by the end I'm going to get somewhere with all this. I just want to lay down the foundation, and I want to break down this passage. so you can completely understand that you all have a potential. And I want you guys to leave this place, I want you guys to leave this consecration week knowing that you guys all have a potential. No matter what anyone says, no matter what your parents say, no matter what your siblings or your leaders say, it doesn't matter, because potential is personal. Potential is between you and God. Potential is not between you and your best friend, or between you and your spouse even, or between you and your parents, or between you and your pastor. Potential is between you and God. That's why people say it's dangerous that you share your dreams and your hope. Not that we're being selfish, but once people get a hold of your potential, they take advantage. Once people get a hold of your potential, they begin to try to slow you down because they can't get ahead of you. Once people start to get a hold of your potential, they become an obstacle. That before we could work around them, but now we can't even get past them. Potential is personal. It's between you and God. God gave you arrows. And just like potential, an arrow would only go where you direct it. It would only go as far as you send it. It would only go to the destination that you want it to go to. And this king got arrows. He got potential. He got a glimpse of what was going to happen. But potential gives you a glimpse. The process fulfills it. The first part of what he received was a glimpse. The second part, where he had to strike the ground, was the process. And this is where we all kind of give up, because we live in a generation that we want the product before the payments. That's why we created finance. That's why we created payment plans. That's why we created loans. That's why we created credit cards, because we want the product before the payments. And he saw the glimpse of what God could do, but God didn't give it to him yet. He was telling him, there's a process. Pick up what I gave you. Pick up what you have in your hand. Pick up your potential and endure the process. And he only struck it 3 times. He fell short of what God wanted him to do. Potential can be very uplifting, can change the world, but it can also kill you. Potential is very dangerous. And what do I mean by that? A gifted musician can change lives in a church, but it can also damage lives in the club. A great communicator, great speaker with the same potential can change lives in a pulpit, but also can create wars. Potential is not only useful, it's dangerous. And today I want you guys to really think about your potential. Is it being useful or is it dangerous? Is it affecting your life or is it being a benefit? We all get arrows, we all get opportunities, and it's what we do with them. Do we just strike the ground 3 times and we give up?
All right, come on.
It says that the prophet of God was angry because he had the same potential in his hand. He also carried those arrows. And he also saw the same glimpse that the king did. And he was angry because the prophet knew if he would have had the opportunity, he would have kept striking the ground. He would have kept striking the floor. And the king gave up. We like the glimpses, but we don't like to fulfill the process. And I'm getting to my last point. And this is where I'm going to focus the rest of the sermon. And I'm going to focus, and I really hope that it stays in your heart and it stays in your mind. Because potential is not just spiritual. Potential is in everything. If you want to run a business, you need to have potential. If you want to become a doctor, you need to have potential. If you want to be a successful person, you have to have potential. If you want to be an athlete, you have to have potential. Potential is not just spiritual. You can apply this in everything. And as we get out of this Growth Consecration Week, I want this to affect every area of your life. Why can't a Christian be successful? Why can't a Christian be rich? Why can't a Christian be a counselor or a therapist? Why can't a Christian be growing into becoming something great, maybe even the president? Why can't we have the potential to do that? Why do we limit ourselves in just the spiritual? Why do we just limit ourselves, our potential, what God has given us? If you notice in the Bible and you look at many stories, God multiplied not only in the spiritual. He took loaves of bread and fish. That wasn't spiritual. People were hungry. He saw potential in it and he multiplied it to feed. We take it spiritual, but that was literal. But we try to limit God in just the spiritual, and God is out of and in of season. God can produce in anything. Don't bury it. We've been picking on this king, this whole passage, but I want to get to the prophet. Because once the prophet died in the springtime, this was the season of war. All the kingdoms would wait for spring to begin their raids, to begin their war. So once Elijah died in the springtime, the raids began, and while the raids were coming in from the east, it was just the coincidence that they were burying a man. And when they saw these, the Bible calls them raid parties, because they would come quick. They got this man's body and they threw it into the grave of Elijah. And it says that once his body touched his bones, he became to come alive. And I want to focus on this because I know it was a promise of God that he would fulfill that last miracle. But why did Elijah have to take it to his grave? Why did this unfulfilled potential that this prophet had in his life, why was it in the grave? Why was this last miracle in the grave? Why was this hidden potential in the grave? Why did they have to throw a body into a grave for that potential to come up? Why did Elijah take that last potential to his grave? We try to blame the king, but can it be that the prophet also fell short and took potential with him? And he took it to the grave. And Jesus talks about this parable in Matthew 25, where men would take the talents and produce it. But when we get to that last man, it says that he dug up a hole and he buried the master's money. A lot of times, we hide our potential.
That's right.
We bury it because we're so trained to lift up our eyes and to reach to the heavens and to open up heavens. And we ask God, open up the heavens, open up the heavens. But if you notice that God didn't open this king's window, he made the king open the window. And there's going to be seasons in your life that you're going to ask God to open a window for you. You're going to ask God, open this, and God's going to respond and say, no, you do it.
Come on.
No, you go open your window. Because I gave you everything that you need. You have everything, but you're burying it. And with potential, it's very dangerous when we bury it, because I'm scared that a lot of us here have potential that souls need, and our youth needs, and people next to you need, and we're burying it. Your potential can save someone's life, and we decide to limit ourselves. We decide to just hide it. We decide to close off everything and just bury our potential. We make it in ourselves that our potential is not good enough. We convince ourselves that our potential is nothing. And I'm going to give you guys this one for free, that a lot of times we try to compare our potential with others, and we don't understand that our potential is connected to our purpose.
Wow, that's good.
And we will never get as far as the person next to you because your potential doesn't fit their purpose.
Right.
And I apply this in my life, because there has been moments that I would see key leaders and I would try to chase and I would try to follow them, and I would try to be where they're at, and I would try to be as good as they are. And things wouldn't fit, things wouldn't sound the same, things wouldn't act the same, things weren't planned the same, because I was trying to imitate his or her purpose. And I was trying to imitate something that God has already set aside. I was trying to create my own potential, and something that I learned with potential is that it's God's. I remember when I first saw Jay lead worship, I saw potential in him. So I tried to shape him, and I would try to tell him, do these songs, and do it like this, and be like this, and dress like this. And God spoke to me, and he told me, you don't even know where this potential is going because you didn't put it in him. Why are you trying to shape something that you don't even know where it's going? And we try to do that in our own lives. We try to shape our own potential. I can only go as far as here. I can only be as good as this. I can only go this far, and I can only strike 3 times. But the difference between us and the king had no more opportunities, but we have grace. That if today we strike 3 times, tomorrow we can do 5. And if in 2 days we don't even strike at all, next week we can do 11 times.
Amen.
We have grace. That's the difference between us and the king. We all have potential. Tell your neighbor, we all have potential. And I'm here to tell you that I don't care what the enemy has been putting in your mind. I don't care what the enemy has been telling you. You do have a meaning. You do have a purpose. You were created to be someone. You were created to do something. God didn't sacrifice his life for you to just be afraid your whole life and having that window closed. God didn't call you to be afraid your whole life and not grow. God didn't call you for you to bury your talents and to bury your potential. And a lot of us are guilty of that. I can't speak well enough, so I'll never be a pastor. And God is saying, who are you to shape your own potential? I put it in you. I want to be a worship leader, but I don't get the chance. Who are you to shape your own potential? And we get scared and we limit ourselves and we get frustrated with the process because we saw a glimpse of what God wanted us to be, but we give up on the 3rd strike. We saw a glimpse of us saving souls and bringing youth in and multiplying our churches and being someone. We saw the glimpse of it, but because it hasn't happened in 5 years, I don't have potential. You've been wanting that person, a relationship where you feel loved, where you feel like you matter, where you feel like it's going to go somewhere, where you feel like you're going to be married and you're going to have kids. And you see a glimpse of it, God shows you. And in your first relationship, when your heart is broken, you give up on that 3rd strike and you can't heal. And you can't go on. And you feel alone. You feel like no one's ever going to love you. You feel like your time is running out and you can't have kids. You feel like, and I really feel this in my spirit tonight, that a lot of us, on the first relationship, we give up on that 3rd strike. So it's easy for us to just close that window and to open up another one of parties, of sex, of drugs. Because we rather ignore what hurt us. We rather ignore what is keeping us down. We rather ignore what is hindering us, what is limiting us, what is holding back our potential. We rather open another door, another window that is easier to look at, that has a better view, because we're scared. I remember the last time humanity tried to bury potential, it rose on the 3rd day. I remember when God's people saw the Red Sea, God saw the potential for them to be free. I remember the last time God's people saw a Goliath, God saw a king. I remember that in Moses' anger, he struck a dry rock, and fresh water flowed out. You can't tell me you don't have potential. You can't tell me that God can't make potential flow out of you. You can't tell me that you can't grow. You can't tell me that you don't have a meaning and you don't have a purpose. You can't tell me that when the world saw old, rugged wood barely holding together, in the shape of a cross on a hill. God looked straight at it, and he saw potential to save the world.
That's right.
Not only there, he didn't stop there. He looked past that, and he saw you. And because he saw potential in you, he said, I'm setting you up. I'm setting you up to shoot. I'm setting you up to shoot that arrow into what's scaring you to grow. I'm setting you up to shoot that arrow into your enemies. I'm setting you up to shoot that arrow to those that are keeping you down, that are oppressing your mind, that are oppressing your heart. You know, that family situation that is scaring you. I'm setting you up for you to devour that. You know, that sin you don't want to confess. You know, that sin that you're scared to tell people about, and you feel like your life is over because of that. You know, that thing that you're hiding in your heart, and you're hiding from your parents, and you're hiding from your pastor. You know, that porn addiction that you just want to close the window so no one sees it, because if no one can see it, they can't hurt me. God is giving you the opportunity. He's setting you up for you to shoot. And like I mentioned earlier, God will never set you up unless he sees potential in it. If you had no potential, you would not be in this place. You would not be here tonight. We're all waiting for our season, for our time. And I'm going to invite you guys to stand. We're all waiting for our moment, for them to cheer our names, for them to call our names out, for them to put us on flyers. But the first miracle that God created, when he turned water into wine, he told his mother, it's not my time yet. He was out of season, and he was still producing. He still had potential when it wasn't his time. He was still able to do a miracle when it was not his time. Potential knows no season. Potential doesn't care about your circumstance. Potential is not grounded in what kind of family you have. Potential is not grounded in what financial situation you have. Potential is not grounded in what past you have, or what history you have, or how many girlfriends or boyfriends you had, or what you did the night before, or what you did yesterday in the car with that girl or that boy, or what you did last week. Potential is not grounded on that. Potential is grounded in your heart. And your heart will always follow you. No matter where you go, you can't live without your heart. You can't live without your potential. It's your choice if you want to bury it. It's your choice if you want to close a window towards it. It's your choice. But God has given you all potential to do something. Potential is not just in this platform. If you can draw and write a book for children who don't have homes, that's potential. If you're an athlete and maybe you didn't make it big, but there's fatherless children that need a coach, there's potential. If all you can do is sew, I know a hospital filled with people with cancer who are cold, there's potential. If you feel like you're alone and you have a big house with rooms, I know a couple of people that are homeless, there's potential. There's potential. Potential is not just in this platform. Potential is not just in this room. If God made you smart enough to be an engineer or a doctor, there's potential. Just because it's not a ministry or labeled as a ministry, there's potential. We limit God to a platform. We limit God to the only gifts he gives is up here. We limit God too many times. And tonight when we come into this altar, I don't know what season or what position you are tonight. I don't know if you're the one that's closing a window in your life because you're scared and you don't want to look straight at it because it's limiting you and it's oppressing you. Or I don't know if you're in the position where you've tried and you've gotten what God has given you, but you've only struck the ground 3 times. Or I don't know if you're the person who's hiding your talents, hiding the master's money because you don't feel it's good enough, you don't feel you're good enough. One thing that I've learned in my 23 years, I know I'm still young, but God taught me a valuable lesson that I have to endure the process, even if I just get a glimpse. It's not it's not for me to question God's timing. It's not for me to question what God has for me. It's not for me. It's for me to endure the process. And what I learned, that the only thing that can help me endure the process is His Spirit. It's His fire that burns within me to do something every day for Him. For me to do something that can save. For me, it used to be about music. It used to be, but now it's about my brothers. It's about the youth. It's about this city. It's about my neighbor. For me, it used to just be about learning a song and a lick. I thought that was my potential. But God showed me, no, that you're burying your potential. You're ignoring the possibility that you can be something more, so you limit yourself. You limit and you shape your potential. And I feel a lot of us are doing that today. This is all I can do. And God is saying, no. Look past the cross. Look past generations. I'm setting you up for something more. And I'm going to invite you to this altar for those that feel like God wants to do something big in their lives and they just don't know what it is. Holy Spirit, burn like a fire, all consuming, here in your presence.